Nobody told me about the zone until I had already been inside it. That is the part that stays with me. Not what I saw in there, not what happened after. The fact that I walked into it without knowing what it was, without any warning, without anyone pulling me aside before my first shift and saying, "There is a section of this park you do not go into, and here is why." I walked in because it was on my assigned route, and my assigned route was on a map. And the map did not say anything about a zone. The map just showed trail. I came out different than I went in. Not dramatically different. Not in any way a doctor could measure or a person could see from the outside. But different in the way that a piece of metal is different after it has been held near a strong magnet. Something in the alignment changed. I have spent 2 years trying to find the right words for it, and that is the closest I have gotten. My name is Ray Cutter. I am 54 years old. I have been a night security guard in the restricted interior of Yellowstone National Park for 2 years and 3 months. Before this, I did 20 years of overnight security at a federal data storage facility in Idaho, which is as unglamorous as it sounds and which prepared me for this job in exactly one way, which is that I know how to stay awake and alert through a long, quiet night without letting the quiet make me sloppy. Everything else about this job I had to learn on my own, mostly by making mistakes I was lucky enough to survive, and occasionally by finding information that someone had left behind for exactly the situation I was in. I am going to tell you about the zone. I am going to tell you what I know about it, what the rules say about it, and what 2 years of working around it has taught me. I am telling you because when I came out of that zone on my first night, there was nobody waiting with answers. There was just a radio call from my supervisor asking why my GPS tracker had shown me stationary inside the restricted area for 47 minutes and whether I was all right. I said I was all right. I did not know yet whether that was true. The restricted interior where I work covers a section of the Yellowstone backcountry that sits between two of the park's major thermal basins. It is not a section the public ever sees. The trails through it are maintenance access only, used historically for monitoring the thermal features and the hydrology of the basin corridor. It is geologically active ground. The crust in places is thin enough that you can feel the heat through the soles of your boots and hear the water moving below you at all hours. The sulfur smell never fully leaves. You stop noticing it after a few weeks the same way you stop noticing any persistent smell, and then one night it comes back stronger than usual, and you notice it again, and what you notice is that the increase in intensity means something is changing below the surface. The zone is in the northeastern section of the interior. It covers roughly 2 miles of trail and the ground on either side of it. There are no markers indicating where it begins or ends. There is no signage. There is nothing on any map I was given that identifies it as anything other than standard trail corridor. The only reason I know its boundaries now is because I have walked into it and walked out of it enough times to feel where the edges are. That feeling is real and it is consistent, and I trust it the way I trust my own boots to tell me when the ground is getting soft. When I walked into the zone on my first night, I did not feel the edge. That is the thing about the first time. You do not know what you are feeling for, so you do not feel it. By the time you realize the air has changed and the sound has changed and the ground under your feet has a quality it did not have 30 seconds ago, you are already inside. I am going to describe what the inside is like because I think you need to know before I tell you the rules, and I think you need to know from someone who has been in there rather than from a document written by someone who understood it theoretically. The inside is quieter than the outside, not quiet the way a remote area is quiet at 2 in the morning. Quiet the way a room is quiet when something has just happened in it and the air has not settled yet, a present quiet, a waiting quiet. The thermal features inside the zone are the same as the ones outside it, vents and mud pots and the occasional small geyser, but they sound different inside, muffled, like they are operating behind glass. The sulfur smell inside the zone is different too, heavier, and underneath the sulfur there is something else, something I have never been able to name, a smell that is almost mineral, almost organic, sitting below the sulfur the way a bass note sits below the melody of a piece of music. The ground inside the zone looks the same as the ground outside it, but it responds differently to weight, not dangerously, not the give of thin crust over a thermal void, a subtle extra compression, as if the ground is slightly more aware of being walked on than ground normally is. I know that sounds like the kind of thing a person says when they have been alone in the dark for too long and their imagination has taken over. I am not an imaginative man. I spent 20 years in a windowless building watching server room doors, and I have the inner life to prove it. What I felt under my boots inside that zone on the first night was real, and I have felt it every time since. On my first night, I walked approximately a quarter mile inside the zone before I stopped. I stopped because I became aware that I did not know how long I had been walking, not in a disoriented way, in a specific, concrete way. I looked at my watch, and the time it showed did not match the time I expected it to show, based on when I had started my shift and how far I had walked. According to my watch, I had been on the trail for 2 hours and 19 minutes. According to my sense of the shift, I had been on the trail for maybe 45 minutes. The difference was not explainable by anything I had experienced in 20 years of night work. I turned around and walked back out the way I had come. The edge of the zone was as clear on the way out as it had been invisible on the way in. One step the air was the zone air, and the next step it was the regular backcountry air. And the difference was immediate and physical, like walking out of an air-conditioned building into summer heat. I stood on the trail outside the zone and checked my watch again and radioed my supervisor and told him I was stationary and checking my equipment. He asked if I was all right. I said yes. He said my GPS had me stationary for 47 minutes. I had felt it as less than 5. I went back to the guard cabin at the end of that shift and found a binder on the desk that I had not seen on my first walkthrough of the cabin before the shift. It was sitting in the center of the desk with my name written on a piece of tape on the cover. Inside was a 12-page document titled Zone 4 Internal Protocol, Restricted Interior, Yellowstone Night Security. I sat down and read the whole thing before I went to sleep. The document started with a single line that was not part of the numbered rules. It said, if you are reading this, you have already been inside Zone 4. We apologize for the gap in your briefing. What follows is everything you need to know going forward. I want to tell you the rules, and I want to tell you what they mean. The first rule said, do not enter Zone 4. The boundaries of the zone are marked with white quartz stones set at ground level on both sides of the trail. Once you know to look for them, you will see them clearly. Until you know to look for them, they are effectively invisible. You now know to look for them. Look for them from the beginning of every shift, and do not cross the line they mark under any circumstances. I found the quartz stones on my second shift, small, pale, set flush with the ground, easy to miss if you were not looking for them. They ran in a line on both sides of the trail and disappeared into the brush on either side, marking a boundary that ran well beyond the trail itself. I have not crossed that line since the first night. On some shifts, I walked the boundary line for a section of my route, keeping the stones on my left, staying outside them. The zone on the other side of the stones looks identical to the zone on my side. It is not identical. The second rule said, time inside Zone 4 does not move at the same rate as time outside it. The differential varies. On some entries, the difference is minor. On others, it is significant. There is no reliable way to predict the differential before entering. This is the primary reason the zone is a no-search area. Search personnel who enter Zone 4 to look for missing persons become missing persons. The zone does not release what enters it on any predictable schedule. Do not enter regardless of what you see or hear inside the boundary. The second rule answered the question I had been turning over since my first night. The 47 minutes my supervisor had logged against the 5 minutes I had felt. The zone had taken time from me, not returned it, taken it. Whatever I did in those 47 minutes, whatever the zone did with me or around me during that time, I experienced it as 5 minutes, and it was not 5 minutes. I have thought about what that means for the 3 people I later learned had gone missing in Zone 4 before the no search designation was established. Whether for them the differential ran the other way. Whether they experienced their disappearance as a long time or no time at all. I try not to think about it too long. The third rule said, do not attempt to use electronic equipment inside Zone 4. GPS, radio, phone, camera, none of it functions reliably inside the boundary, and some of it will malfunction in ways that persist after you exit the zone. If you have entered the zone inadvertently, power off all electronics immediately and navigate out by sight. Power them back on only after you have confirmed you are outside the quartz stone boundary. My GPS tracker malfunctioned on my first night. The malfunction was minor and corrected itself by the following shift. The document said, some malfunctions persist. I know a guard who worked this zone before me, a man named Briggs, who told me his radio never worked properly again after he spent an extended period inside Zone 4 before the no-search protocol was established. Static on every channel. Voices that were not dispatch. He transferred out 6 months into the posting. I do not know where he went. Nobody I have asked seems to know either. The fourth rule said voices heard from inside Zone 4 are not to be responded to or investigated. The zone produces sounds that include human voices. Some of these voices belong to people who entered the zone and did not exit. The voices are not the people. The distinction is important. A voice is a recording. The zone records and replays. What you hear is the record, not the source. Do not engage with the record. Do not call back. Do not cross the boundary in response to a voice regardless of who the voice belongs to or what it says. I heard the first voice from inside Zone 4 on my 4th shift. Male, calm, giving what sounded like a trail condition report into a radio, technical language, distances and surface conditions, the kind of report a maintenance worker files. It was coming from maybe 50 yards inside the boundary, clear and close enough that I could make out individual words. I stood on the trail outside the quartz stones and listened for about 10 seconds before I remembered the rule and kept walking. In 2 years, I have heard voices from inside the zone on 63 occasions, male and female, some giving reports, some having conversations I can only hear one side of, some saying nothing intelligible, just the rhythm of speech without the content. Once on a night in my 2nd winter, a voice that said my name, Ray, just that, once. I kept walking. I logged it. I did not sleep well that day. The 5th rule said, after any shift during which Zone 4 has been more active than usual, defined as 3 or more distinct voice events or any observable change in the thermal features along the boundary, take the long route back to the guard cabin. The long route adds 30 minutes to the return walk. Do not take the short route after an active shift. The long route is marked with blue flagging tape on the left side of the trail. I have taken the long route 41 times in 2 years. I did not understand why the long route mattered until about 8 months into the posting when I took the short route home after an active shift by accident, having lost count of the voice events during a particularly busy night. On the short route, halfway back to the cabin, I walked through a section of trail where the air had the zone quality, the compression underfoot, the muffled sound, the smell beneath the sulfur, not Zone 4 itself, something that Zone 4 had put out into the trail corridor, an extension of itself along the path of least resistance, which was the short route. I walked through it in about 20 steps, and it was gone, and I have never taken the short route after an active shift again. The zone reaches when it is active. The long route keeps you out of its reach. That is the fifth rule in plain language. The sixth rule said, at the start of every shift, stand at the nearest point of the quartz stone boundary and look into the zone for exactly 60 seconds. Do not speak. Do not use any equipment. Stand and look for 60 seconds and then begin your route. This is not optional. This is not ceremonial. This is operational. The 60-second observation at the start of each shift communicates your presence to the zone in a specific way that affects its behavior during the shift. Shifts that begin without the 60-second observation are statistically more active. Do the 60 seconds. I do the 60 seconds every single shift, standing at the boundary, looking into Zone 4 for 60 seconds at the start of a night in Yellowstone in January, when the temperature is below zero and the wind is coming off the basin, is one of the less comfortable parts of this job. I do it anyway. What I see during those 60 seconds is almost always nothing. Just the trail continuing into the zone, the thermal features in the middle distance, the dead timber on the slopes beyond, normal landscape. But on some nights, on the active nights, on the nights when the voice events will be high and the zone will be pressing at its boundaries, on those nights, the 60 seconds shows me something different. A quality of attention from the other side. A sense that the looking is mutual. I look into the zone for 60 seconds and the zone looks back, and we establish something between us that makes the rest of the shift manageable. I cannot explain that better than I just did. I have tried. That is as close as I can get. The seventh rule said, when your posting ends, leave this binder on the desk with the new guard's name on a piece of tape on the cover. Do not brief them verbally before their first shift. They need to enter the zone once without knowing what it is. The first entry without knowledge is necessary. It calibrates something between the guard and the zone that cannot be achieved any other way. We are sorry about this. It is the only way the posting works. I read that rule on my first morning and I sat with it for a long time. They let me walk into the zone on my first night on purpose. The gap in my briefing was not a gap, it was the protocol. The 47 minutes I lost, the 5 minutes I felt, the change in my alignment that I am still trying to describe accurately 2 years later, that was not an accident. That was the calibration. I do not know what was calibrated or between what and what. I know that since that first night, I can feel the zone boundary without seeing the quartz stones. I know that the zone behaves differently around me than it apparently behaved around Briggs and the other guards who came before me. I know that 63 voice events in 2 years is considered low activity for this zone. I know this because the shift logs going back 10 years are in a file cabinet in the guard cabin, and I've read all of them, and the average is higher than 63, much higher. Something about the first night changed how the zone relates to me. I am the product of a calibration I did not consent to and cannot fully understand, and I have made my peace with that because the alternative is to be angry about it, and anger does not help you do this job. What helps you do this job is the 60-second observation at the start of every shift, the long route home after active nights, the quartz stones underfoot as a constant reminder of where the line is, and the understanding, hard won and still imperfect, that Zone 4 is not trying to harm you. It is trying to keep you. There is a difference, and the difference is everything. It kept 3 people before the no-search protocol. It kept them the way it kept my 47 minutes, without violence, without drama, just a differential in time that compounds until the person inside and the world outside are too far apart to bridge. The quartz stones are the bridge. The boundary is the bridge. My job is to stand on the outside of it and make sure it holds. I do that every night. I will keep doing it. Stand outside the stones, look in for 60 seconds, walk your route, take the long way home. Let the zone know you are there. Just do not let it keep you. It